Hi, Abhinav. So we'll be starting a session at 8:30, 8:30ish. So just wait for the
Okay,
next few, the other two sessions to close, and
no
then
problem.
we'll kickstart.
Sounds good.
Yeah, Abhinav, I'll start the session now. The other sessions are closing up. People will be joining in. Hi,
Okay.
everyone. So we have Abhinav here. So the reason why, Abhinav was, ex-product manager at Gartner, and he just built a fintech product. And one of the reasons, if you're doing a product conference, what's it without something about fintech? And because also the problem is that building a fintech is really tough. It's not like I could just go build some random product that just does workflows. You can do it, but building a fintech, there's a lot of compliance, there's a lot of regulations, and compared to other products, engineers and CTOs are put in a position where they have to think about compliance and data security at a very early stage than other companies that has the liberty to do it at a later stage. And that is exactly why we wanted Abhinav, since his experience is very relevant to building the solution, that too, especially on the face, where I can't ask, somebody like Stripe or somebody who's built a fintech product 10 years back, because building that and then moving to GDPR, CCPA, and all this compliance
So
is easier, but building a product with all the compliance in place, that's hard. And that is why we have Abhinav here. And he has built a fintech product recently, Recur Club. And he'll be talking right now about the same experience. Feel free to ask any questions. He'll be answering. Okay. Yeah.
great.
Abhinav,
Thanks.
I'm giving the stage to you. I'm going mute. Okay.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the introduction, Hari. Yeah. So before I start, quickly a bit of background about myself. So I'm Abhinav Sherwal, an electrical engineer from IIT Delhi, and did my MBA straight after that from IIM Calcutta, and then have spent around 7 years working in primarily building B2B products. And before founding Recur, I spent close to 3 years with Gartner in building a B2B software ratings platform called as Gartner Peer Insights, and grew it from almost like the beginning to around 8,000 odd B2B technology providers across the globe, and was working daily with these founders and trying to understand the space. And before that, was working with Opera Solutions, a US-based firm, in building B2B products on a multiple different use cases. I think as a product manager, what I've also learned is that we should always focus more on our problem, right? And I've spent a lot of time in exploring the problem space, right? Uncovering the problems, validating them. And I think in my experience, it's always good, specifically from the product standpoint, to love your problems and not the solutions, right? Because solutions are easy, and I have learned it the hard way. So not a lot of people know. So Recur is not my first fintech. So my first fintech was in 2017, right? And I'd like to briefly talk about how essentially we started building something, the mistakes which we did at that point in time, and how those mistakes essentially helped me to improve and iterate and build probably Recur to what it is today, which is actually live and users are using it, right? So yeah, so a big bit of background. So in Batwa, that fintech was called Batwa, and essentially in 2017, I was like 2 years out of college, had a couple of credit cards, and I myself was struggling with a problem, right, of managing these multiple credit card payments, right? And I was used to maintain an Excel and used to track all the offers and everything, and was trying to solve it myself, right? And that's where essentially thought about it, that this is a problem and credit card usage is building, and started building an app, right, and a solution for it. Whatever I was doing on Excel, I was like, okay, let me create an app. I was really passionate about design, so I'm a UX designer myself, designed something, hired a couple of interns from IITs, and then started with building an app, right? And after 6 months of hard work, right, we essentially had nothing. So we had an unshippable product. We fail to figure out how do we like monetize this. Like no one will pay us to manage their credit card. It's just be a lifestyle app, right? And we essentially closed the venture in the end of 2017. And I think we all know then a year later in 2018, Cred launched and the rest is history. So I'll use this as an example on where we struggled during this journey and what we did right and what we are doing right now, right? So Recur is essentially a second attempt. And to talk more about what we are building, it's important to understand why we started with this. And with my background and with my last 3 years working with B2B founders, essentially, I realized that while I was trying to monetize my own rating platform, that most of the founders, they struggle with their cash flows, right? And I was very curious to understand because we all keep on hearing the news, right? That so much money has been raised by this company and it's kind of a trend, right? There's so much liquidity. But if you look at it, there essentially is only one way for these tech companies to raise capital, right? This is equity dilution. And if you see other mature companies across the globe, their capital stack is fairly different. But if you see a SaaS company or a tech company, their capital stack is totally skewed toward equity, right? And what we often fail to realize is that equity is one of the most expensive type of capital for any founder or any company. Not only because it dilutes ownership, but think of all the time it takes. Like as a founder myself, I have spent like months in convincing to thousands of VCs on what you're trying to do, and then actually funds coming into your bank account. It's a lengthy process. It's a full-time job of a founder to raise that equity money. And secondly, if you see that essentially there are not a lot of non-dilutive financing options available itself, like specifically in a country like India, in emerging economy, we don't have a lot of non-dilutive financing options, right? And our traditional banking system itself, they are not equipped enough to underwrite these new age companies. For example, like we have been in operation for around 7 months, and we recently went on to get a credit card for Recur, and bank asked us to do an FD of 1 lakh for a credit limit of 90,000. So that is how much equipped they are to underwrite risk in new age business, right? Even though they have been around for like hundreds of years, but intrinsically, like your banking, your traditional sector is very hesitant in challenging any status quo, right? And that's why we see that mostly these fintechs, around 2000 plus fintechs, have come across unlocking new use cases with the help of technology. And with this in mind, to understand this scenario where we see this capital stack and single digit founders, right? We started with the concept of Recur, right? And our core mission is to create a better way for founders to get fast, flexible, fair, and non dilutive capital with the help of technology with a click of a button, right? And our first product in essentially making this happen is called Recur Exchange, where we allow tech companies and SaaS companies to trade their future recurring revenue and convert their future contracted revenue to upfront cash. It's a very simple example. Say if your client pays $1,000 a month, you can use our platform and you can trade this future revenue and get cash upfront without any hassle, without any paperwork, without spending a lot of time convincing anyone, right? So that's the beauty of this platform. And essentially, it helps founders to better manage their cash flow. It allows them to only dilute for smart capital, right? It allows them to then balance their equity stack and their capital stack with and substituting with a non-capital, non-dilutive way of capital and maybe retain higher ownership. So we launched last month and are serving many clients and giving them access to their cash flows. And soon, probably our mission is to then expand this idea of a non-dilutive alternative for founders to probably any stage of companies. But we started with this. But it has been an interesting journey. So now we understand how I failed to build probably like a baby cred before cred, and how we essentially did something in less than 6 months. We were able to build something from ideation, validate, and the learnings which I used from Batwa to essentially launch a product which users are actually using. And I'll just break up into 5 things. So because we are still like a couple of months into launch, I'll not talk about scaling and what the challenges which comes with it. But yeah, like any product you build, right? We essentially start with validating the problem. I'll cover in like a couple of examples in Batwa and in Recur. and specifically when you're building fintech, it's important to know your regulations, right? It's very important. That'll tell you how much time and how confusing and overwhelming it can be. But like Hari was mentioning, like know your regulations, know your technology, know the data and the laws, right? And then definitely identify your niche, build the right team, and build the MVP. And then I'll talk more about how you can essentially speed up that process by outsourcing the non-relevant and non-key areas of your business. So whenever you start, like any company and every company, just like fintech, it starts with zero, right? You always have to validate the customer needs. It's important to check, right, that whatever you are building, is it a is it just a good to have problem, or is it an actual pain point for your client? And it's always good to prioritize painkillers versus vitamins, right? Because painkillers is something which users are actually struggling for, and there's a burning need, versus a vitamin are mostly always good to have. So always try to say prioritize painkillers, because and the best way to understand that the problem which you're working with is up is how burning is it for your clients, is to actually check and see if they're willing to spend time to fix this problem, number one, and secondly also to check if they're willing to pay if someone solves that problem, right? It gives you an answer about the problem statement you are trying to solve. And to talk more with Batua, like while I started, I knew that I had this problem, but I always thought about it that it's more like a vitamin, right? It's a good to have feature. I do it in my part time. That okay, if I had an app to better manage my credits, it could have been fantastic, right? And that was probably the hypothesis I started with, and that is one of the biggest I think challenge where I did not spend time in understanding the problem. But it really helped me when we started the Recur. I think the first 1.5 months, what we do was just talk to the founders, right? Even though I came with a background, had direct connects with a lot of different founders, but we wanted to validate, right? We wanted to understand truly the challenges which comes with say equity raise or getting capital, right? Being in that situation where you are like searching for capital, even though you have revenues, right? And that's where by talking to customers, we realized that essentially debt is not an option, right? We talked to a couple of friends of mine. They say that most of the banks, they essentially ask for mortgages, they ask for security, which most of the founders don't have, right? So that was not an option. So we understood the challenges, the paperwork, all the, I'd say the time it takes. It was a big pain point. And we knew that we were onto something. There is a problem. Even though we did not see it, we only see all the tweets and all the LinkedIn posts, but there are thousands of other founders who also have a big business, but maybe they're not just VC ready. Or maybe they're still struggling with all the paperwork and still don't have cash in bank, right? So we knew that we were onto something, and that's where we started with building on this problem statement. Secondly, whenever in fintech, like you said, that it's always good to know regulatory environment, right? In fintech, it's when I have learned it the hard way. It's important to know ins and out of fintech and banking, because this industry itself is highly regulated, right? There are, I don't know, countless laws such as your Payment and Settlement Act, your peer-to-peer lending, your NBFC regulations. I can go on and on. And then while you're doing that, then you have to make sure that you adhere to the RBI guidelines and the SEBI guidelines, right? So, like my 2 cents, get some legal advice, right? Get in touch with people who can advise you, right? Who have can help you understand first of all the legal construct and the legal framework, and then possibly help you structure an innovative way where you can build or create an offering. So yeah, so it's if it's about money and it's about India and fintech is about money, it is highly regulated. So even for your MVP, make sure you find someone who can give you some advice, right? In Batua, essentially we skipped this step. So we were like, okay, I am doing it on Excel. We just have to monitor credit cards. We'll do the payments. Who needs to know the environment, right? And 5 months into the journey, we realized that essentially it is not possible. No bank was willing to work with us or let us process payments, right? And we did not know. We did not have a clue. So start with understanding the regulatory environment. And I think it really helped. This failure really helped me in Recur, because I think the first day itself, the first thing we did was get on a call with lawyers, like try to understand, okay, this is what we are trying to do. Is there a precedent? How can it be structured and different things? And we were lucky to then finally have someone join us full time. That has been a blessing, right? And it has really speed up and helped us building. Like, I think it has been a great addition. Otherwise, me and my co-founder have spent like thousands of hours, I don't know, just understanding why can't we do this? Because in law, essentially, logic is slightly different. Right? So you need someone who understands that law logic and can help you structure whatever innovative idea you're trying to build. Cool. So once you know your regulations, you have validated the problem. It's also very important to identify your niche, right? And know your competitors. So I think once a senior leader at Gartner told me that Abhinav, the only thing you have to lose is your focus, right? And that thing stuck with me. So I think fintech is a very crowded space. We have new entrants every day, and we have thousands of companies who are trying to solve and identify their niches. And there's a huge opportunity, right? So always, whenever you start, I would say, identify the problem of the people you are targeting. Like identify who are you trying to target, right? So whenever you start, maybe focus on the problems of few, right? In maybe a specific domain. Don't try to solve it for everything. And I know, and I have like struggled with this because I was when I started with Batua, essentially, we wanted to create for everyone, and we ended up creating a lot of problems for us. And at that point in time, 4 years ago, I realized that essentially India had 500 or more credit card option available. That's 4 years ago, and that is how you essentially learn, right? So in Recur, whenever we started, we were very sure that we want to focus our solution, even though we want to create an alternative financing way for everyone. So that's why we picked up a particular section of companies which we started with, which is recurring revenues, and started with the SaaS sector because it was very close, very like understood the sector. Start with sector you're comfortable with. Don't try to solve it for everyone. So start small and think big, right? So that's always important. Great. And then I think let's last 2 points is definitely building the right team, right? Because in fintech, in Batua, when I started, me and my co-founder came from ops and product background. We did not understand the regulation. We did not understand the fin and the tech in fintech, right? And that's why we struggled, right? So definitely, while building a team, make sure that you have the right people you're partnering, who are advising you, who are essentially part of your team. And once you have that, definitely uh, have someone work full time, because I tried in my earlier venture. We try to do it part time for some time, and it doesn't work in my experience because it is extensive. There's a lot of theory you'll have to read. There's a lot of time you'll have to spend. So have someone in your team essentially working full time, right? And while you construct your team, definitely, I think it's relevant to all the startups that work with people who essentially you like working with, right? Because essentially you're creating a family, right? So work with people who trust you, who will stick with you through highs and lows, right? And reward them with equity, right? And so yeah, in Recur we say that dilute less, don't sell your equity, share your equity with your team, and that's the best way of rewarding your team and building any product or any company. Great. So lastly, definitely to talk more about shipping MVP, what to build versus what to outsource, right? So whenever we started building an app, I think in Batu also we really struggled in prioritizing. We went all in. We wanted to do everything, but now we have so much options available, and you can actually look for whatever you can outsource. It will really give you like the speed of execution, as well as it will make the product itself you're offering cost effective. So ensure that you explore whatever you can outsource, and then strip down your MVP so that you can actually ship it, right? Because at boot stage, resources are also very minimal, right? So you have less and you have to do more. So look at outsourcing, and I think we have really partnered well with, I think, 5, 6 different partners, which helped us to ship the product within a couple of weeks. So, and I think the most important thing it helps our team to be focused, right? We are not trying to solve use cases which have already been solved. So it's very important to explore these outsourcing because there are very good options available which can really speed up your product and your life cycle. and can actually make it the journey very quick from maybe idea to time to market. Okay, so in short, I think like definitely spend a lot of time in understanding problems, right? Spend uh, a lot of time in understanding your users or understanding the problems, right? And identify whatever you are building, is it a painkiller or a vitamin, and always prioritize painkillers. Right? And while building fintech, know your regulations, right? Or have someone who know your regulations and have know your technology, understand the data issues and how much responsibility it comes with, right? While building, remain focused on what you are trying to build, right? Identify your niche. So think with big, start small, and probably relentlessly prioritize and ship something to the market, right? And that's the best way to start getting feedback. I think finally, I think a startup success is technically pegged to your founding team. So construct a team which you trust, which has the right expertise, and I think definitely keep talking to people who understand the fin, the tech, and a whole lot of other stuff which comes with it. Yep, I think that's my time, guys. Thank you. Happy to have any questions.
Guys, feel free to put your questions. And Abhinav, I think Abhinav just left the stage. Just give me a second to get him back.
Hey, sorry, my
Hey, no worries. Hey, Abhinav, one thing that I wanted to ask, like few questions that I had when it comes to fintech. So the thing is, when you're building the product, from a tech point of view, okay, when you're incorporating, regulations at fast, on a very early stage, how do you make sure that you comply with one is that regulatory part? Yes, the planning and everything happens, and at the same time, tech. Okay, how do you make sure that building this regulations doesn't slow your product development?
sure. I think and that's a dilemma which we have been also struggling with from the beginning. And that's why like our CTO have been very strict on this. And he comes with a like 10 years experience in this industry and actually making a payments bank. Like he was with Airtel and had good experience. So he was very sure and he had the right connects on what all regulations do we need to follow. And that's why we take data very seriously. Like all the client data which comes, no one actually get to touch it. He don't let us do anything on email. Like I think one day we accidentally tried to do something on email and he knew. So I think he's very compliant in making sure that data doesn't leave anywhere. And we talk to the right people, right? And we understand all the different regulations in India and globally, right? And I think one thing which gives him nightmare is GDPR in Europe. And that's why I think last night itself, we were just discussing, let's set our website in Europe. We don't want any data of European citizens. Still, we are very sure that we
You
have it
know,
safeguarded, right?
there's particularly a SaaS tool, $5 per license, $5 per month. You put it, and it blocks all traffic from your, from EU.
Yep. I think that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, yeah.
I think,
Cool. So, what other key problems did you face, while building it, on a tech perspective, as a PM perspective, when we have to do something, like how do you do it?
sure.
Like what problems did you face, and how did you navigate through all of these regulations? Because normally a PM person is more a tech guy or a solutions guy, and they are more on the tech side itself. And how did they understand legal, and how did you break through it? Of course, it's good to have the legal guy, but you need to have that knowledge, right? Little bit you. How did
Yep.
you navigate that bridge?
Sure. I think one of the most instrumental part in doing that is my co-founder, who comes with like 10 years experience in finance, worked across different financial institutions. So he has been instrumental, to be honest. I think when I started, I was primarily handling all the product, but he came in and when we started to then interface with the legal and with the tech. I think that has been great. So you need someone who understands. And to be honest, if he was not there, I don't think if we could have built something like Recur in such a small amount of time. So it's very
Mhm.
important to have someone who understands the finance, definitely, right? I think in fintech you need that. There's no getting away with it. And then definitely you need someone who's willing to be innovative, right? If you get stuck with like a traditional lawyer, it's the same thing, right? They'll just think like a traditional banking sector does, and you cannot make anything innovative. So it's very important to find, I think, and what we did essentially after struggling, after like trying to get a quote for different legal firms. And let me tell you, like I used to think that tech is expensive, legal is very very expensive to say the least in India, and not a lot of people can afford it, right? So that's why we use a lot of connect with my network, within my co-founders network, talk to a lot of different people to get advice. And then once we were very sure that okay, this is the route we want to take, we approached someone and we had
Mhm.
something which we can afford to work on it. And then what we also did was included our tech folk, like someone from the tech, and I used to interface with him from the tech in the meetings itself. So they can also listen that what are the challenges, right? Why you cannot save this data? Why you cannot share this data, right? And how essentially we can make sure that in future we can get all those certifications, right? Because we can not wait for getting the certifications, rather it'll just slow you down. But while building the product, you should be aware. At least the tech team should be aware on the practices which need to be followed, right? So that really helps. It's a cumbersome process. It slows you down, but yeah, I think in the end you have to prioritize in doing the right thing, right, and not wait for the regulatory licenses and everything to be in place to get certified, for example.
Yeah, and one curious question that I had, previously we had Arvind from VP of, Arvind VP of product at Hiver, and the first product managers in Freshworks. He was mentioning whether to build or buy, or rent, when it comes to SaaS. But the thing is, since you guys, your product links with, your product links with Stripe and other fintech solutions. So normally, if it's within your application, of course, you have the security of AWS, which has a SOC 2, type 2 compliance, or Microsoft. Their certifications extends to you because you save the data there. But especially when you jump into the API segments and how you connect and push the data back and forth there, how has the experience there been? How did you make sure that you had all the compliance in place? Did you So the question of whether to buy or build, what was the answer at this particular stage?
Sure. So I think at this early stage, it was most often buy, because we are, I think, in this world, like, and the stage we are in, where there's a lot of capital, a lot of competition. I think speed of execution essentially defines a lot, right? If we get stuck in building everything, and at this stage, we are very young, right? We have a very small team. So that's why you want to make sure that we are very focused in solving the priority use cases. And I think that's why I address that it's very important that you identify what is the most important thing which is creating value for you, right? And then focus on that and try to outsource whatever you can, which is kind of, let's say, commoditized, right? And there's a lot of different functionality which have been commoditized in the SaaS and fintech space. It is very important to, I say that we preferred wherever possible to outsource, and that's why that really helped us. And but if you have the resources, if you are say Kunal Shah, you have $1 million to start with, definitely try to build whatever, because it definitely gives you the reliability, right? It gives you more control, like you said, and but it's just that if you have the resources, definitely try to build it in house because you can afford to do that. But if not, it is not a no go. You can still get a lot of stuff pre-built outside, and then probably as you scale, try to build most of the things in house, which can improve your reliability and stability.
Yeah. And with all the regulatory issues and everything right now, do you think fintech from India can actually, we could just go global? Because right now, most of the solutions, like, Pipe that we saw on chat, Abhishek has mentioned it. But the thing is, Pipe and other, most of the solutions right now, because we are all registered, all the SaaS companies are registered in US, they could just, distribute cash. Velocity does it really well in India for D2C businesses, but it's focused for INR, for Indian businesses. Does, fintech, especially on the lending side of things, how difficult it is to go global? And do you think in future it will be easier or difficult to actually go global for these companies because the market reduces with all these? And where do you see it? How will you navigate it?
Sure, sure. So I think first of all, like definitely when you see like SaaS products, it's easier to scale because it's all digital, right? But when we talk about fintech, it is very closely integrated with the economy of the country, right? So intrinsically, the model itself is very closely, I would say, intermingled with the financial system, if right. And we know all the regulations which come specifically if we talk about India. There are very strict laws in FDIs, in foreign capital. So there is, I'd say, in the near short term, any Indian company building a fintech essentially in lending to be working across different geographies is very difficult, right? And the other solution then we have is to then crack the different markets. Like if you see in ClearTax, right? They just moved to Middle East, right? Very recently. So you'll have to pick and choose the right markets where then you'll have to navigate the regulatory environment, try to fine tune your product into essentially to be ready to be intermingled with their economy. So it is not as scalable as just like clicking on a button and then just like start lending from different country. And probably I think till the point we start lending in crypto, I think it will be very difficult till the point it's integrated with the financial system.
Can I see crypto in Recur soon?
Yeah, we had this idea, right? It's just we prioritize on building small and then thinking big. But yeah, definitely, I think
Yeah.
it's on our to-do list, in our wish list
Yeah.
for next few
Yes.
years.
And thank you. I think we are at 9 p.m. and we have to close. So thank you, Abhinav, for sharing your expertise. Guys, if you have anything, if you want to talk to Abhinav, hit up to him in LinkedIn or Twitter. He's active in LinkedIn, so I would
Yeah,
suggest LinkedIn. So reach out to him if you have any questions, or you have Amar and others who's in the chat, from the Recur team, and these guys will be able to help you in fintech and tech. You know, so feel free to it. And that's it. The session is over. Thank you so much for coming in for this particular conference. It's a mini conference that we do, periodically, specifically focusing on certain functions. And this time it was product. Previously it was marketing. And in future we'll be doing a GTM focused and then a venture focused one. And feel free to join. These are micro conferences. In November, we'll be having a larger conference for India, which would just celebrate the Indian SaaS. And
fantastic.
yeah, so we see the breakthrough happening, and that's why we started it last year, India 2020, and this year we'll be continuing India 2021. So follow SaaS Insider. We'll be giving you the announcements about the next event. Do join in and go check out the booths. They'll be available for some